It is time to engage! Welcome, everyone. I hope you are steering clear of the phage out there. Luckily, the three of us are still getting together for this as of now, but, we'll find out next week if the world comes to any kind of crazy end.
People start eating each other.
Exactly, right? Yeah. If the zombie attack is full on. We want to talk about episode 8 of Star Trek Picard, Broken Pieces. And it had some things that made me very excited, and some things that made me very upset, and some things that made me very confused. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today. We're going to talk about Iconians. We're going to talk about the Takan Empire. There's all kinds of interesting stuff, and I'm not sure what they mean. So there's going to be some neat theories or some neat shade thrown at the writers. So let's see how this goes. Vanya, general thoughts when it was over. Were you feeling good or not?
I was not feeling good.
Okay.
I don't know what I was feeling, honestly. I just think I was really frustrated with some things, particularly Raffi stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What about you, Poise? Were
That's
you feeling
interesting.
good?
I was actually feeling good for the Raffi stuff. You got me at the frustrated. I totally agree with frustrated. I got a bunch of frustrated. But Raffi, finally, she got a little bit of redemption, I suppose.
But
she got an I told you so.
Some vindication.
But not one
Agnes.
apology.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
Nobody's like, oh, sorry about that. In the 13 years
it's
of
the
leaving you out of
the
nowhere.
road to Raffi's redemption, I
Well,
suppose.
yeah, I feel like Picard was completely dismissive of her still, even though she was right about everything. And they're so sensitive to a killer.
Yep.
And still kind of treating her like crap.
Well, and
I'm like, how does that work?
It's interesting because we were talking last week about Jurati and this idea of whether there was some kind of PTSD.
Yes.
And as it turns out, there was a psychic block put in there by that Romulan.
But about the specifics of that, but not about that she came to visit her.
Yeah.
There's no psychic block there.
Yeah.
She still didn't say anything.
That's true.
And she
to a
still,
killer.
and there was no psychic push to kill Bruce Maddox either.
It doesn't seem that way, but maybe. I mean,
I don't know. I'm
knows?
not buying that.
Who knows?
Well, let's.
Everything after that mind meld is great. I mean, we don't know.
Well, and she was shown the admonishment as the and I'm gonna quote the pronunciation that
Sheer fucking hubris.
No,
Wrong one.
Spliff 4038 said, and I love this pronunciation. The Shat Vash is now the best way to spell and pronounce that. The Shat Vash. They seem to have. They seem to basically be a bunch of Romulans who know that all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again. It's just Battlestar Galactica now?
And Dune, because they're dark Bene Gesserits.
Yeah.
Isn't there some of that in Lord of the Rings a little bit?
Well, I mean, there's the repetition of the Dark Lord coming in that way. Yeah.
A little bit, if
I think
you go further back.
And I think but that's like more of a forever battle between good and evil, whereas this is like synthetic life will always come back every time.
Did I say Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones?
You said Lord of the Rings.
I meant Game of Thrones, sorry.
In Game of Thrones, I mean, they have winter every now and again, and it sucks every time. So there's that.
But as they're really connected with Battlestar as far as synthetic life.
Yeah.
Repeating something that we did before that we don't want to do again, sort of thing.
Yes.
And then they also have a pain box, like Dune pain box.
Basically. What happens to your sanity while you put your hand in here? It's fascinating. And we found out that the Romulannisters have an aunt. So let's get And it's what's her name?
It was a good connection. I like that connection, even though it was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
We got another flashback.
It would have been nice if the Romulannisters' bedside chowder spouting exposition wasn't necessary, because it just got really, I'm saying this for the camera, and that was a shame. But I want to talk about that admonishment a little bit.
Certainly.
This idea of a destroyer that came thousands of centuries ago, so that puts us into the 200 to 900,000 year range, and it's technically still accurate. So that gives us two major empires in the history of Star Trek, and most of them basically were invented during the first and second season of Star Trek The Next Generation. So the Takan Empire seems like the best fit, because this is an empire that was able to move suns specifically, and they also were in ancient Romulan star charts. That makes sense because there are star charts that would potentially show it for the Romulans, because Federation has it as well. Now, the problem with that is that the Takan Empire was 600,000 years ago, which means maybe it's the Iconians, because they were 200,000 years ago, and that's closer to Raffi's timeline, where she said 200 to 300,000 years.
Yes.
Now, that's TNG Season 2, and that homeworld was destroyed from orbit. So it was a supernova for the Takan Empire, but they're like 3 times older than should necessarily fit.
Right.
So the question now becomes, have they made up another empire?
Empire, and that is capable of also moving stars?
And the thing I find a bit fishy about that is that there's a line that Picard says later that mirrors something that Riker says in The Last Outpost in Season 1, Episode 5, when he says, fear is the only enemy, and Picard in this episode said, fear is the great destroyer. So it kind of feels to me like if Shaban isn't specifically calling out to those episodes, they're just in the back of his head and influencing him either way.
Or it's just Frank Herbert.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is a really
fear
big
is
fan
the
of
mind
fear.
killer.
Yes.
Yes, it could be that.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that that episode goes together. And if we want to stay in canon, that makes a lot of sense if he were to use the same kind of thing.
Now, the thing that breaks my heart about this is if they only watched 5 hours of Star Trek, got to the Takan Empire, and were like, here's a plot, that might explain why nobody remembers the Inner Light except for the composer. Like, I'm not sure why some of these things are consistent down to almost the phrasing,
Right.
and then other things are like they never happened in Star Trek.
It's weird. It's like they're trying to stay away from being exactly the same thing, but in order you can still be not the same thing and still follow canon.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't
Voyager
have to
did
be.
that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. And I know I've read a couple of things that Shaban said he really wanted to stay away from repeating himself because he felt like you can't repeat TNG. You know, he was like a losing battle. You know, like because it already exists, right? And no one's ever gonna think it's good enough. Just like when TNG first started, and you know,
TOS fans were like, this
is not real Star Trek. You know, it's always gonna happen, but. Yeah, you should expect that's always going to happen, but you overcome it by, you know, not staying away from canon, but actually like embracing some of it.
Leaning into it and telling stories that fit within it. You know, you look at the way TNG evolved into DS9, into Voyager, into Enterprise, and then things stopped, and the TV evolution of Star Trek had to be picked up 15 years later, and it was no longer an evolution. It wasn't teams handing off the baton. It was a whole new group of people picking it up, and some of those people worked on the movies that JJ made.
Yeah, and I'm having an issue with Star Trek trying to fall in line with the way everybody else does things when Star Trek's the one who's supposed to pave the way as far as particularly as far as television goes, you know, which has always been like at the forefront. You know, when Lucille Ball like championed like Star Trek, it was because she thought it was the future. Yeah. So it should always be looking towards the future, not trying to play into the same things as Game of Thrones or anything like that.
I think also, I mean, it also has to do with a gap in time, right? So Star Trek kind of, I suppose, dropped the ball because there hasn't been any Star Trek
to be specific,
for a long time.
Legendary shitbag Les Moonves dropped the ball.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is there hasn't been Star Trek really for, since...
The end of Enterprise.
Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
2004?
Yeah, it's early death in Season 4 when it was getting really good.
Yeah, so I mean, Star Trek has to kind of play catch up now. It sort of has to pop back into
like
pop culture. That's what it used to be the leader, and I think now it's sort of like, oh wait, you remember us? Altered Carbon.
But I think that's a mistake. Like it doesn't have to be like that. I think they're choosing to play into that as opposed to saying we are at the forefront. We've always been at the forefront. Let's just take it back.
Well, and when Seven shows up in this episode, going full on like big Ripley energy, deciding to just like wipe everybody out, and there's that happening for your good guy, and then your bad guy, the Romulan Lannister sister, who's also big Ripley energy murdering people, and it's like none of that's new. That's 35 years old. Like, we've seen all this stuff before. And it was interesting to see that there are, like, visual ways that they're trying to make it feel up to date, where Seven of Nine goes in and is playing with the holographic thing that looks a lot like the holographic thing that that's on Rios' ship that looks a lot like the holographic thing that the Discovery has. And it's like, oh, you guys are just putting the same things
And
in
Discovery is
every...
supposed to be old.
It's supposed to be 100 years before.
Yeah.
And this idea that... And I thought it was funny when Picard sat down in Rios' chair and you heard this swell of the Next Generation music, and then he's like, I don't know how to operate this.
That's cute.
Right after that, he talks about being on the USS Reliant, which is a contemporary ship to the Discovery, which has the very same holographic stuff. So Picard should have been trained in this new Trek sense of how the world must have
saying that
worked.
all of that existed.
Because apparently the bridge of the Enterprise on Discovery doesn't look the way that the bridge of the Enterprise on the Next Generation looked. So, like, there's all these ideas of,
It's funny because remember
what's retconned visually.
Remember, we also had a Reliant in Star Trek 2, right? Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
So whenever I hear Reliant, I think of that one that was exploded. The one that you're speaking about is the one from, when was he on the Reliant? I forget.
Well, he was mentioning how his first post, he was
Pegasus.
on the, that was Riker's.
That was Riker's.
Yeah.
That's Riker's.
The Reliant would be, like, as soon as that ship would be destroyed, the next Reliant would happen.
Okay.
So I imagine because there were no other ship types and the Excelsior hadn't been invented yet, it would be the Reliant A, which would be the same.
Probably an A.
Yeah, the Reliant A would just be the same ship, a Miranda-class vessel. So that'd be my guess. But I want to talk about this idea of Seven coming back now and becoming a Borg Queen for a minute there. What did you think about that,
exactly
Poise?
it.
How'd that feel?
Well, that was great, right? For a minute, in fact, there were two exciting moments of that episode, and this was one of them, right? She is tempted to become a Borg Queen for just a second. I think the power is tempting, and we're sort of struggling with a sort of a moral dilemma. She's wondering about, okay, I can activate all these people to become drones again, and to use them for my purposes, and to make everything better, but she may not want to release them after it's over, right? When she actually does activate these people, and they're like, okay, we are Borg, they get sort of airlocked, and they're all, and so it sort of was like, I kind of wanted to see a little sort of drone action happening.
But then the XBs were the ones that came back, and so it was interesting to see
friggin'
that.
XBs.
Did it feel to you, Vanya, like Seven forgot about the new cooperative from Voyager, where a bunch of ex-Borg got together after healing themselves up and became a lovely civilization of happy single-shipped, Borg?
It didn't really, it didn't seem to make any sense. It didn't make any sense, again, with canon, that you do that. And the fact that she even would risk that, that's a huge risk. And she basically, after she came out of it, I was like, that's lucky, because we don't know how,
That's right.
it seemed a little convenient that how lucky it was.
You mean
that she
lucky
was
that
able
they all
to,
died?
No, that she was
lucky
able
that
to
she just
release
fell out of
herself
it.
being like, okay, I'm not going to be the queen.
That Annika has more work to do.
Yeah, she was just like, cluck, cluck, cluck. And I was like, oh, she could just go in and out of that? I don't know.
Right.
I didn't know how much about that. But.
I also wasn't really into the eye treatment because
'cause
the Borg Queen
doesn't have-
has those Riddick eyes, right? Those silver mirror eyes, but the black sclera lenses, that says something else to me.
Yeah.
She's also pretty slimy, Borg Queen. And I wonder if that's from birth. How are Borg Queens even created? We don't even.
I mean,
really know.
I think they're just kept moist.
Yeah, it just kept damp.
Yeah.
All slimy and oozy and.
It's true.
Yes.
I'd also love to talk about the fact that the female Romulanister got to kind of be fun in this episode. There was the moment where, that bedside chowder spout was rough writing and nobody could have saved that. But then there was this beautiful moment she had when she said, can they be gassed? And then the answer was, you can open up an airlock and send them all to space. And I was like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And there was just this delicious moment where I was like, okay, this actor
did not like that.
into this.
I thought she showed, and I thought they had a good way of showing that she's kind of a badass. That she's kind of a bit she survived that whole thing.
She's Shat Vash.
Yeah.
I didn't like that at all.
No? What was it
again,
about you didn't like?
Again, it was about her playing evil. Ooh, I like that. Twirl the mustache.
It worked for me.
But
what else can we do? Do we have sharks that we can? It's no. Just
I
fucking
feel like
do
at
the
that
evil
point
thing.
they leaned into what they've been doing already. If all of a sudden she was very just pragmatic and serious about it, then it wouldn't make any sense because they've been leading into her being like evil anyway. And the fact that it was better than last week when she was like, "Oh, I care about treaties and stuff."
Yeah.
Instead, this time she was just like, "Yeah,
I'm a delicious villain."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just want to be evil.
Yeah.
And sexy, you know.
Delicious villains.
Yeah.
They take me out of the thing. Like,
Okay.
you know.
That's fascinating. Now, one thing I really enjoyed was as these Romulan threats kept happening, you could hear a song, you could hear a motif coming up. And then in the moment where all of those Romulan ships are warping and preparing and leave the cube, and you hear the Balance of Terror Romulan music hit, and I was like, yes! At least the composer's paying attention. It feels like Russo's the only person who understands what his job on Star Trek is all the time.
He's going in, he's like looking into the canon, he's really researching where he can land specific things. I mean, he's making his job easy by doing that. But I feel like it's efficient, it's smart. It gives a feeling that you don't even know you're experiencing because maybe the writing is not at that stage, might not be up to the par, but his music is, which creates an emotion regardless.
His music is badass.
And but also he's using it at the right times. You know, he's tapping into it. It's not overused.
No.
He's not killing it and writing absolutely nothing fresh. But he's like blending it in where it matters, and it is hitting the spot.
And sometimes he subverts it, like in that swell with Picard forgetting how to use the starship.
Yes.
And it just sort of
It's clever.
Yeah.
A clever use.
And it made for a funny moment, which is this show is kind of
lacking. I also don't agree with that. I think it just makes him more like a bumbling old man, which is what they've kept doing over. I get where they acknowledge his age, and physically he can't do things, but it's just sort of like over and over. It's like, shut the fuck up, Picard, in this episode. It's like,
I would
it's
say,
more of the same. Of like, this guy's a relic. This guy's an incompetent relic. That's basically the message we've been getting since episode 1.
I would rather see him be bumbling, like, and old, and not be able to do things like run or do something new, rather than see him be completely inconsiderate and not apologize to people. I'd rather see that part. You know what I mean? Because even after Raffi had said, "Oh, maybe I'm gonna rub it in Rios's face," you know, and I felt so bad for her there. The moment after that, he was talking to the Admiral, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And he was rubbing it in her face. So he gets to rub it in somebody's face, and Raffi barely gets to rub it, because then as soon as she goes to rub it in Rios' face, she becomes like a mother figure to him. And she's like rubbing his face, even though he totally was about to betray her last week.
And like throw her out an airlock, maybe. There's character inconsistency
and
here.
That's what I would say.
Why are they even talking to that? Okay.
But I do feel like there has been this give and take between Picard is incredibly competent and Picard is a complete bumbling like old man. But I think they're trying to tell us that he can't be the Jean-Luc McClane that he was in First Contact. He's not a guy who could just hop on a runabout and solve this problem himself. He needs a crew.
Have you seen incredibly competent? Where maybe I've missed it.
No, you're saying he's not.
They're trying to pull back and forth where they're like, he has been able to figure things out that have been crazy leaps. Yes. And he has known who to go to and how to get help, but he hasn't been able to do any of this himself. And it's interesting to watch the kind of competency they give him and the kind of inability that a 90-year-old man has.
Right.
And so it's that balance that I don't think they're getting right, but they're trying to, and that's hard.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I agree with what Vanya said a couple of weeks ago about the sort of, it would be tiresome if everybody just sort of fell down and respected him and he's like a great admiral and so on. But I'm going to give you a real world analog. I've been thinking about this last few weeks. Colin Powell, respected general or whatever he is, and this and that, fantastic people. And then he has that weapons of mass destruction issue.
Yep.
Okay. And so
he's a fall guy.
He becomes a fall guy, and his reputation tanks.
Yep.
But if Colin Powell walked into this room right now, we're not going to say, "Get the hell out of here, Colin Powell, you son of a bitch."
Mitch McConnell might. Like some people
we would give him the respect that his title and station deserves.
Yeah, but I would also hold the weapons of mass destruction thing against him as well.
Is that what you would do if you walked in the door?
Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Would you? Colin Powell's right here.
I tell you, if
I feel
You're gonna go get the hell out of here.
well, look at the way George W. Bush's basically had a complete like recharacterization in the last 3 years because well, I guess compare him to other Republican leaders
he
that
can
are
read.
That's
I mean, maybe.
No, but he can read a teleprompter that makes him look like he's capable of reading.
And I feel like some people would
read.
And some people have given George W. Bush a complete pass, and some people have looked at Clinton as a complete monster because of the monstrous, horrible things he did. Like, it really depends on the audience you're going to, and I feel like Picard's biggest problem is he can't read a room. Like, he walks into a room and he says, "You, give me all the starships," and they say, "Get the fuck out of here."
Yeah,
and it's like you're going to the wrong admiral.
What I find, if maybe they didn't write him properly, but I'm sorry, but I will defend Raffi to the end. Apparently, I'm gonna die on this hill. But honestly, when she disrespects him, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Because every single thing she says is dismissed,
I agree.
or just kind of like casual. Even when she's right, he's like, "Yeah, okay." You know what I mean? He's all casual about it.
Yeah.
He's not like her friend. You know what I mean?
And this episode's a great example.
He also treated her like crap. So that's totally valid.
Yeah.
How she treats him is totally valid.
And I think
but everybody else,
the way he treated her in this episode on its own is very cool. But in aggregate, Raffi is just getting totally screwed. Yeah. That one moment where he says fact or theory, and she's like, ugh.
Yeah, why
theory.
is she...
And then that second time where she says fact, not theory.
Yeah.
That works really well. But when you compare that across the whole season where she has just been trod on and treated like shit and she's currently being completely vindicated and no one's like, "Hey, Raffi, you're right."
I want to see, where's her fucking cake?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where's her ice cream and fries? Why is she not, like, why aren't they bowing down to her?
She doesn't even get her red wine.
But honestly...
Ice cream and fries?
And in, this episode.
Yeah, that was her thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
the peppermint ice cream.
And then, but also, it's not just about that. It's the fact that why does she have to be sheepish around him? Even when she's right. And even when she has a theory, her theory should be considered first, it should be trusted as probably mostly right.
She's been pretty
right. You know what I mean? So it's just like, he wouldn't treat Riker like that. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have been like, "Oh, fact or theory." He's trusting Girardi, who fucking murdered somebody.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And was gonna murder somebody else. He's trusting her and being like sensitive to her, and he's being so tough on Raffi still, even when it's now everything's proven, and everybody's calling her. And I think maybe I'm frustrated, probably as a black woman too, of watching television where the character that is a black woman becomes this like matriarch who becomes this mother figure, and regardless of how she treats people, she doesn't necessarily get treated well in return. And these people aren't her kids.
Well, I feel like every woman...
They're grown-ass people.
I feel like every woman over 40 with more than 3 scenes in this show winds up having a mother-child relationship. Like, Seven is being treated as a mother because she had... She gets
a hug.
Well, and essentially Elnor is a surrogate.
Yeah.
So that it can like take the place of Icheb. And even though that was 13 years ago. And Raffi, who ostensibly lost her son because of her behavior and the way he feels about her. And now she gets to play mother to not just the young people on the ship, but even Rios.
Yeah,
but she's known Elnor for like 15 minutes.
Yep.
But
Elnor gave her a super big hug the last time.
And she has to do, all the women have to do all the spanking. You know what I mean? Even Troy, she had to be the heavy. Like, Riker got to be an equal and he gave a little jabs, but really they were on the same level and just being buddies. Where Troy had to be the one who was just like, "I'm gonna spank your ego. I'm gonna and the Admiral has to do the same thing.
Yeah.
All the women have to do this job of making sure that these guys are in line. Right. And I find that very frustrating.
It's remarkably
Agnes being the exception.
Because we're supposed to be in the future where we're total equals, yet we're
Yeah.
still acting like it's the 21st century.
Yeah.
And
I find that
how
very
are we-
peculiar.
How are we in the 21st century catching up to that?
Yeah.
When they're so far, hundreds of years ahead of us.
And one thing I thought was fascinating with that conversation between Picard and the Admiral was the fact that Picard just assumed he was going to be told no.
Yeah.
And that there was this show had one too many F-bombs, and it came from her again. It's
Thank you.
I do not believe she swears like a truck driver. Every scene she's been in,
Well, you know
she
what?
does it.
Do you want to know something? If she was the only one who swore in this episode, that would have been okay, because we've been like, okay, that's our character.
Yeah.
Right? She swears.
Yeah.
This is a potty mouth admiral, okay? We got that. But if when there's more than one swear, it's like, okay.
It stops being a characterization.
There's a Twitter account called Swear Trek.
Yeah.
And it's kind of making no sense anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
It is awesome.
Swear Trek.
Swear Trek's awesome. And I'm kind of like, it's losing, to me, it's
just actual
Every
Star
time I
Trek.
see it, I'm like, but that's Star Trek now.
Yeah.
Swearing.
It's too much.
But if she
Dude,
had sworn...
enough with the swearing. Enough with the
No,
swearing.
not enough with the
No.
swearing, as much as use it. Be better writers, I want to
Yeah,
say. Like,
I
use
mean-
that better. I feel like it's been used really well by some of the holograms.
And yes, and I think that's funny. And even when Tilly did it, it was pretty cute. Like, it wasn't, like, important.
I didn't
but
like it.
It
I
wasn't
like it
important,
either.
but it didn't bug me as
Okay.
much.
I don't want
And then
any start swearing.
And then I
in
felt
Star
like...
Trek.
I like
and no
some
one
of it.
I can
else
deal
really
with shit.
swore.
I can deal with a shit and a damn and a hell.
Yeah, because Picard says shit in French in Lost.
That's true.
Last Outpost.
Yeah.
He says merde, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's right. That's
you
like
know.
a nice flavoring. But I don't need shut the fuck up. I don't need that. Shit and hell
Yeah,
and damn.
and then-
We're good.
But then it's like, but even when he was talking to her, I still felt he was being smug.
Yeah.
And I felt like maybe that was to me where I was like, is this even Picard? You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
the thing
'Cause
I
it's
didn't like about that was the last time he acted like a spoiled brat, he didn't get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And rather than learn from that, he does exactly the same thing and this time gets what he wants. So I'm
Yeah,
like, Picard's not even growing as a character.
Exactly. When I was watching, I actually watched Unification last week.
Oh, yeah, so did I.
Yeah, and I was thinking about how Spock handled that situation.
Yeah.
I realize he's a Vulcan, and that's very different. However, they kind of talked about Picard being almost like a Vulcan, that he had a lot of Vulcan traits, and even more so after mind melding with
Sarek, yeah.
And so then I thought about Data and Spock had a lot of conversations in that episode about being human, and Spock was doing something that was like radical and cowboy diplomacy, which you could kind of say that's what Picard's doing now. But he had so much diplomacy, like actual diplomacy.
Yeah.
Not just the cowboy stuff. And right now, Picard's seeming very just the cowboy stuff without being...
But like the crazy old cowboy.
And actually, Spock had to be like pushed back, a bit by Picard and put in his place a bit. And yet, he went through all of that. I think he has learned nothing, even in this short time.
It's like he's getting into his crazy Sarek stage.
Yeah.
Where he's just lost it.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I hated that conversation with Aaron.
Actually, I gotta watch
because he did
Sarek
it again.
I
Yeah.
gotta watch Sarek again.
Yeah,
That
that's good
episode.
going into that. Unification's a pretty great pair of episodes.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk a bit about this idea that Jurati had psychic blocks in place because of the Vulcan Romulan mind meld rape, and the way that mirrored the blocks that Rios put in his holograms, and that was cool structurally to get to see that. Because during that time, we've also got someone like Soji who has these blocks and is trying to figure out who she is and what she does like and what she doesn't like. And the way that as the characters come together, they're able to heal these things.
Right.
And I thought that was quite beautiful
That's wonderful.
structurally. But as I was being constantly irritated by things, I had a hard time getting to it until I watched the episode a second time and could feel it. Because in that scene where Raffi was doing like group therapy with all of the Rios,
Which was very funny.
which was remarkably fun, and I've got to say it was nice to finally get to see the full-on Orphan Black moment, like the big scene where they're all together, and the sheer fun that actor will get to have.
I
doing
gotta
that.
tell you, I fundamentally disagree with you.
Okay.
Okay.
This guy, it felt like an acting showcase.
Yep.
And I can't stand. I'm sorry, I just can't. Every time he comes on, there's a new hologram character. I'm like, okay, what accent is he doing now? Oh, he's doing Scottish. Oh, he's doing Irish. Oh, he's doing British. it just becomes an acting showcase, and I never concentrate on what this guy is saying. You know, I'm sure he's a great actor, but having all of these voices and accents and hears and things, it just felt like, okay, here's my acting on display.
What do you think? Which
deal with
side? I'm curious to find out what you guys think. Is this something that you're like, yes, give me more Rioses, or is this driving you nuts?
I think there are going to be a lot of people that are like, give me more Rioses. There's going to be tests that you can do and find out which Rios you are.
No more Rioses.
Right? They're gonna, and I'm gonna, and people are gonna take them over again and be like, take them until they get Emmett. You know what I mean? And then, I also thought it was.
Actor, but
I thought
he's a fine actor.
Hey,
but
me, I'm speaking right now.
Oh,
and then, sorry.
The mic's only able to get one of us.
And then I also thought it was great that you said he probably just got, when he got the ship, it was just like, you know, he had a scan, and then he was just like, oh, he just scanned himself. And you had said that at the very beginning when we first met the first couple Rioses. You had said that exact thing, and then that was the explanation.
Turns out.
And I was just like, I love when we predict things.
Right,
that
that's
made me
fun.
really happy. And I thought it was really funny too. And I like that the blocks were there and that they really truly couldn't figure it out. And I like that. I don't know. I feel like an acting showcase is all right when it's done well.
And I think it's done well.
When the actor is really good, and I think he's really good.
Because really, Orphan Black was a like seasons and seasons of acting showcase, and the actors who pulled that off, Tatiana Maslany, Ari Millen, they were exceptional at it. Yeah. And so it's great to watch. If it's, a trash actor doing it badly, then I have a problem with it. But I'm enjoying it because it's done well.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, we don't all have to agree, but I think that he's a compelling character. He's one of their like, in my opinion, he's one of the reasons why I'm watching Picard. Yeah. I mean, we're watching it because we do the show, but also like if I were watching it just and didn't do the show, that would be one of the reasons why I want to keep watching it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm also, I love a brooding bearded man.
Well,
doesn't hurt.
Actually, Soji is the reason that I'm mainly continue watching the show.
Interesting.
Because I find her the most compelling, even more than
Really?
Picard.
Wow.
Now, like at the beginning, didn't care. But now I'm watching for Soji because I think her acting is the most compelling, probably out of everybody on the show.
Really?
Wow. But the blocks that you were talking about also, like the Girardi block, how much of a block do you think that was? Like, how much did that encompass? And was she influenced to murder? Yeah,
did O specifically instruct her in a way that she could not stop murdering Maddox? Or was it just something that she saw the admonishment and decided with her own free will, Maddox must die? Because after that, she should probably die.
Because she used the word hubris.
Yeah.
Because she saw that in him. So I feel like she had her own opinions about it outside of O, based on what she had seen. And then I thought to myself, why are you just letting this woman sit with you? She's highly intelligent. We know that. Why is she not locked up?
Yeah.
Until you get to Deep Space 12, because
she's a murderer.
She's a murderer. And I feel like if this were Janeway, she would have been like, we can talk as long as you're in a break.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I seriously do not think that, any of the other captains would have made that decision, including TNG Picard.
Yeah, absolutely. Like every hue they get goes in the brig.
Yeah.
Like there's a spot to hide someone, even if they're ill, they're at least behind a force field.
Yeah, and they're just having a conversation with her.
But as well as
about things that they're going to do, about things that they want to accomplish. That's, to me, it's not like they're just talking about what has happened. Yeah. They're talking about what they're planning to do in the future. That's right. She should not be privy to any of that.
Well, also, Soji shouldn't be talking to her and telling her stuff about herself. And I'm like, you just found out that this guy, she just killed Maddox.
The guy who probably made it.
And she's probably been brainwashed. You don't know. Yeah. She's been programmed to kill Maddox. Is there other stuff that she's programmed to do? You don't know?
Yeah, because we don't know if she's programmed or if she made the choice on her own. That's right. And, she can say whatever she wants, but then next thing you know, she's like, a Battlestar boomer, and she's like, she has like blocks and she doesn't, she's popping Rios in the gut with a phaser.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the old man gets it.
Or the old man gets it.
I feel like this, if this finds itself at the end with a room full of boomers, it's just going to be such a Battlestar Galactica ripoff of season 1. I will not know what to do with myself. But I want to talk about this psychology of Rios and what we learned about his time on the Ibn Majid. And it looks like the Ibn Majid, it's a Curiosity class cruiser. And it kind of looked like a Sovereign class. Like it had some design elements from that. So we know roughly how new the ship was when he was on it. The question I've got is, do we think that this beautiful flower character, this male android that is apparently Soji's brother, because she very specifically said my brother and sister.
Yeah.
Who do we think this is?
Oh my
Is
God.
this someone we've seen on the show?
I feel like it's like baby lore, you know?
Right? Well, and I'm trying to think of the various younger male actors that we've seen on this show already that it could be. And aside from like walking past the young black security guard that gives Picard his thing,
Right.
it's like we've only really seen the male Romulan, and he was not at the Admonishment.
Right.
So do we think he's actually not her brother and is maybe a reprogrammed synth?
And also the Shat Vash seem to be all women.
Yep. Which
Like,
is a
just
neat...
like the Kuat Milla.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
they're just... One's the Bene Gesserit and one is the... what are the other evil
yeah,
ones?
I don't know.
Bene
And then-
Gesserit and the... fuck. It'll come to me later.
But also, is he a man in that group like Elnor is a man in his group?
Right? Is there only
you know
the one?
what I mean? Because is that going to be a thing? You know, because I didn't understand why there were no men. If he's he's part of their sect or whatever.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question.
And
I really feel like the fact that this is a show that is only got 2 more hours left in it until the season is done is going to give us either one really satisfying situation on the homeworld of the synths or some kind of cliffhanger. Now, we're 2 hours away from it, but what do you guys think? Are we in for a cliffhanger? Or do you think they're going to give us some resolution with season 1?
I think cliffhanger.
Always cliffhanger.
Yeah?
But
They're going to go
you
1,000
know,
years into the future.
I mean, there might be some things that are taken care of, and
Yeah.
other things that are left. You know, especially since they know they have another season coming up.
Yeah, that was a pretty foregone conclusion
Actually,
that they were going to do.
Could we maybe touch a little bit on the Picard and Soji scene?
Sure. Well, I thought it was interesting,
think
this
of that?
conversation that they had about Data. And this idea that, I don't know, Picard forgot about Data's emotion chip that he had for like 7 years in his head. Because he only talked about the 7 years where Data was unable to express emotion. What did you guys feel about that? Is this just Picard feeling like, he never had real feelings? Or is this writing where they've forgotten about an important part of the TNG?
I think it's kind of both. It's like they forgot about the emotion chip, or if they did remember it, they were kind of like, well, we're kind of going to just talk about Data before the emotion chip. You know, because that's the Data that we decided that people know.
Or
You know
if
what I
they
mean?
only watch the first 5 episodes of The Next Generation in order to get to the Tikan Empire, that's all the writers
Hang on.
know about anyway.
Here's a question I've always had. Here's a question I've always had about the emotion chip. Is that like a programmed emotion? Are they real emotions? Or is it this, sort of simulating emotions? Happy, sad, angry? I mean, would Data feel emotions like you and I feel emotions?
They're real to him.
Or is it like,
It depends on like how you define it. It's like all those philosophy books and Rios's,
Cigar
quarters.
box.
It's like all about existence and consciousness, and I was saying to Matt, we were talking about the fact that death is what makes us human, actually, and the fact even if knowing that you can die, and even making the choice to die might make you more human, like the way Data actually sacrificed himself to die. So I don't think I think like if you're a synthetic or if you're a Cylon or whatever, your existence is based on what you feel, right? Your identity and how you identify with it, because we can't even really quantify how we feel.
I know. How do you define?
Right. So can you really truly define that?
How do you define what Data feels?
Or
does he feel? Maybe he doesn't feel.
You can't say it's not real because we don't know what it feels like. That's like questioning if Data is, can even make choices, which we already defined he can.
He can.
Right, for himself. So I feel like if he says he can feel something, we have to just take that at face value the same way as we do.
When a I don't know, dolphin is happy, is that real happiness or is it dolphin happiness?
Right.
I mean, it depends based on when a Klingon is happy. Is that real happy? Because it's not human happy.
Yeah.
That's true, but that's humanoid happy, right? So if Data sees somebody die,
he's humanoid.
If he sees somebody die and he has an emotion chip, his response would be, well, to cry and to feel sad. But is that a surface response?
I feel like we have programming too, and we have humans that are like make choices to have those emotions too. Some people don't have the same emotions. We're not born with the same sort of things. There's huge groups of people that are actually have to deal with how they deal with emotions. You have autism, maybe you have a different way of seeing the way we handle our emotions or choices, how other people affect us. So I feel like it's the same as that. We're programmed too.
Yeah. It's real for him in the same way that it's real for me and yours are real for you.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the synthetic programming gives all the results that happens to us when we have our electronic sparks that make us feel one way or another, it's as real as it needs to be. But really, this is just Measure of a Man.
Right, exactly.
It is,
and Picard already proved it.
It is.
Yeah,
he
it's
said
true.
so.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I forgot what the hell we were talking about. How did we get onto the emotion chip thing?
Just this idea of the Picard description of Data to Soji.
Right.
And how he described how he hoped he would be remembered by Data if he had survived instead.
Right.
And yeah, I feel like
Then if they have
just
forgotten
missed
the
emotion
chip.
Yeah. Now, one thing I find interesting is that they are hopping into a Borg transwarp conduit to get there quickly. Do we think in the next 2 episodes that we're going to see the artifact hop into a transwarp conduit to get there as well? Because it's convenient that the Borg transwarp conduit is the way they're doing it.
Yeah, I think so. It would make a lot of sense. I feel like everybody kind of has to come together, at the end.
Yeah, I kind of expect Romulans to show up, make the situation worse, the Borg cube shows up, wipes out the Romulans.
Yeah.
That's my expectation.
And I'm concerned for Seven if she goes in there again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it'll be the new cooperative, and they'll frigging remember that they've already done this before.
I still think the Romulans created the Borg. I really do.
Yeah?
I think they're directly, because it explains why they're so, technology and synthetic averse, right? I mean, why have this sort of mortal fear of synthetics?
Well, it kind of feels like the Admonishment and the Shat Vash and the Tal Shiar have always been a part of Romulan culture, because the Romulans came from Vulcan. So they were a spacefaring race before they found their homeworld and became Romulans. And if they were a spacefaring race, it would stand to reason that this Admonishment situation is as old as Romulans. So they could be afraid of it simply because of the Shat Vash and that it's worked its way into the fabric of their civilization. Now, I want to talk about whether this episode was Star Trek or not. Did it Trek it or did it wreck it? Poise.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say...
Really? You were so happy with this episode when we started talking about it.
No, not really. No.
It wrecked it for you.
It wrecked it.
All right.
It
Wow,
wrecked it for
Vanya,
me.
how about you?
Oh, actually, sorry, I didn't explain why.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it just seemed like it was pure feelings. And I can respect that.
Are we sure those are real? I'm teasing.
We look forward to take out the emotion. I felt some of the scenes, especially with Rios. I'm trying to be as delicate as I can. I felt that they didn't go anywhere. I felt I was it was literally one scene where Rios is in his quarters and he's drinking and he's got this sort of brooding thing going on. Yes. I played that scene like 6 times, and I realized I cared less and less each time I played it. You know, I didn't care about his captain. I didn't care about where Rios came from. I didn't care that he had a vinyl player. I didn't care that Raffi said, "Oh, is that a Walkman? Oh, that's so cute." I just didn't care about anything that was happening in there. It's like, okay, where's Soji? When can she get back on screen? Oh, there's 7 of 9. Okay, that's great. Just it didn't do it for me.
All right.
Sorry.
Vanya, how about you?
I thought about this a lot. And I think it tracked it for me. I don't know how I feel about the episode, really. I feel like there were parts I really loved, and then there were parts where I was just irritated. I mean, oh man, I'm never going to figure out how to choose Raffi.
Yeah.
But, and so to me, in some ways, that Picard's reaction and how he behaves and how he treats certain people, I feel is not very much Star Trek. But then I feel like the overall thing, it tracked it enough for me to get by.
Interesting.
To get by. I wonder, you know what worries me? Is I wonder if we're like, because I like the one last week, I wonder if we're just like so lowering our bar from what TNG was.
I don't know. That's why I repeatedly go in and watch TNG episodes to like reset myself. Because at the heart of so many great TNG episodes are that there's a philosophical nugget.
Yeah.
That, you know, no matter how weird and sexy and strange the Naked Now is, like there's a human exploration happening there. And honestly, the acting showcase doesn't bother me because some of my favorite Lore and Data and Nunyan Sung episodes are exactly that.
But those are two. I can deal with 2.
There's like 5. No, there's like 5 of those.
I can deal with 2. You know, Data, Lore, I'm good.
Oh, well, there's Data, Lore, and also Nunyan Sung. He's just got a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
It's a little different. He's like an older character.
It's different because you like it.
No,
yeah. And when's the last time you watched it?
But it's also, you know what? It's also just better written, probably.
And you're right. When you revisit an episode, though, of TNG, what it does for me is actually softens me a little bit for this show or new shows, because then you see their little flaws that they had back then, and you're like, okay, I can give this one a break. You know, and I see what they were trying to do. Like, I feel like this episode, to me, is not a perfect episode by any degree, but I feel like they were trying to touch on very human things and really talk about the existence of who we are. And actually those questions that you're coming up with about, you know, what Data and how he really felt. Like, can he feel? You know what I mean? And then I think about our programming, our internal programming, and I think about Rios and his journey and how painful that was for him, you know? And I really can't take the Star Trek out of that, you know, for me, anyway.
Yeah, and for me, this episode trekked it because there were 2 conversations that really made it work for me. And one of them was the conversation with the Admiral, where Picard said, these are people. They have every right to live and just like we do. Yeah. And in that moment, it was like, yes, okay, there is a beautiful metaphor happening here. And then that conversation between Rios and Picard at the end.
But that's not a revelation.
It's not a revelation. They're never revelations. They're always basic humans, basic human sentiments.
It's like,
I'm black on the left side, he's black on the right side, is as basic as it gets. But it's a beautiful sentiment.
What I'm saying is, like,
Star Trek.
If they're refugees and they're, you know, on boats and they're dying at sea and we have to go to people, these are humans and they deserve every right. It's like, of course they're humans.
See, my beef...
That's Star Trek.
Yeah, that's Star Trek. Because my beef with this new kind of Star Trek is not about the fact that I always talk about how it should be looking at the future, but we're supposed to be talking about our problems that we have now and how we've dealt with them or how we're going to deal with them better in the future. Or shine a light on how it's still a problem. You know? And I feel like that was accomplished in this episode, regardless of if the episode's good or not to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there are parts of this episode that are bad Star Trek because they screw up canon here or there, and that chaps my ass, but it's made up for by the philosophical nugget that works for me.
Because that's always, to me, the most important thing
Exactly.
in Star Trek.
Yeah, and honestly, they could do better homework. I wish everyone did as much homework as the composer, because honestly, Russo is my hero in this.
I love him.
He's doing fantastic.
I love him.
And then it just gets tight. It's like what happened with, remember the first 3 episodes? The first one, it got it, it nailed some certain things. It did take some liberties in the nostalgia area. The second one was like
a disaster.
Oh, what are you doing to us? And then it's like that same director, she like pulled it together in the third one. She was like, I'm gonna complete this, like go out strong. And she like pulled those parts together, stitched it all up. And I feel like sometimes it's like some of the directors, it's like they're losing their way along with the writing. Yeah. Everybody's like not on the same page. It's like just get in the same room. and then just listen to Russo. No,
I think Russo should be the showrunner here. He's watched more Star Trek than anybody, by the looks of it. And I really do feel like if this show is able to land in a spot that feels like Star Trek more than Discovery was able to, I'm okay with all these like weird holographic things that are maybe 20 years in advance of what we saw in The Sovereign. I am really hoping that they're able to pull this out of the fire in the last 2 episodes and keep this consistent while still making it original, because it is getting dangerously close to Battlestar Galactica and Dune. I don't want all of this to have happened before, and I don't want the Bene Gesserit to have the frigging Butlerian jihad in this.
Why I
don't
want Star Trek to copy other things. I want people to just copy Star Trek.
Yes,
absolutely. Which is what it's always been.
I also deeply appreciated the conversation between Picard and Soji. I love the fact that he acknowledged his limitations, his failings. He doesn't know how to express emotion. We've always known that about him, but it's really cool to actually get him to admit it. We've known that for decades.
Well, it's like after talking to Riker and Troy, he remembered that he had 2 teenagers in the Inner Light and was suddenly able to have a conversation with Soji. Yeah. It's a bit weird that it took that for him to actually be like, I don't understand that. All I can do is imagine. And he's being so kind all of a sudden. And it feels like he's being patronizing. And that, to me, was a little bit of such 180 degrees that I wish he hadn't been written as if he didn't experience the Inner Light.
I'm also going to talk about Raffi again, because I have a problem. So, I want to say that she is a good Star Trek character. Because I feel like she's a good friend. And she will keep coming back to you, and she will keep fighting for you, and she will keep making a space and being forgiving, to people. And even when Rios was like pissed off, she like made an effort to dig out all that stuff. She put in research. She did work. She showed, competency porn. Yeah. That's what we're all here for too. Yeah. In Star Trek, you want to have that. And she did all that. She checked all those boxes for me, and then she came and she helped her friend and she listened. You know, I felt like, I think she's actually like shaping up to be kind of a good Star Trek character.
Yeah, I think she's turning into an interesting like Tom Paris-ish sort of character where you're like almost would have been great, something went really wrong, and now we get to see how those 2 versions can coalesce into a great character.
How he's still kind of like a little naughty, he's a little bad, but also a really good friend.
Yeah.
Like stands up for people, has principles,
Yeah, Star Trek is about characters being able to change, whether it's all the Maquis being able to change, or 7 of 9 being able to change, or Data being able to suddenly feel emotions. The characters being able to change. Even on a network show, we would see it happen. And sometimes it would happen in giant leaps because one writer would do it in an hour. But it was a thing that characters would evolve. Deep Space Nine was able to do that across wonderful, vast spaces of time. And I feel like if these characters can continue to evolve, and they started in a place that gets us to a cool spot and we see why it happened, well, then we're watching Star Trek.
Well, what's interesting is the source of Raffi's downfall is actually still in the room with her, right? Whereas with Tom Paris, it's like, okay, whatever, something happened on Earth with him. But Raffi has to look at Picard every day. Her life was disintegrated because of his his choices.
And because of Starfleet. Like, he made choices that
Yes.
screwed her, but she then wound up trying to go after a thing that the head of Starfleet security was never going to let go down.
Yeah, and she was, because she knew the truth, you know, that's like, it was over for her.
Oh, which
you know?
reminds me, was anyone surprised to see Commodore O as one of the Shat Vash?
Nope.
No, and she's half Vulcan.
She half Vulcan, half Romulan.
So that's why she can do the mind melt?
I guess.
But maybe that's why it's like shitty.
It's just like a vicious mind meld. Let me destroy you with these horrible visions.
Well, and I actually revisited only in clips. I didn't watch the whole episode. An episode from season 4 of Enterprise, where he is on Vulcan. There's some. I can't remember all the details.
Oh my god!
But
I
he
love
also
those
has a
episodes.
vision. He has a vision with Sirach.
Yes.
And he's the logic
Yep.
like philosopher who also has a book in Rios's room. All his philosophy books, Sirach is the one that's like the one lying flat, the black one, and it's Sirach and existentialism.
Yeah, I think those 3 episodes of
Enterprise.
The Forge is the first one.
Yeah.
And I love those 3 episodes of Enterprise so
And
much.
it just made me think of that too, because they do a mind meld on Archer, and he feels real bad after. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it can feel real bad if you don't. If you're in a hurry.
And also, if you're a human and something just gets chucked in you, then you get McCoyed. It's not good.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it was cool to kind of also connect Enterprise to, to this too. But I mean, I wish they'd follow canon tighter instead of just throwing a book in a room.
Yeah.
Remember when Clancy's speaking to Picard in his sort of hollow room thing? Why is she sitting in a chair?
Oh, because they have the dumb way of talking that that Discovery likes to use, and that showed up in Deep Space Nine as experimental technology, even though they had it 100 years before that.
Yeah.
It just seems odd.
Yeah.
Because she's sitting down where she is.
And
so
then
it's
she
just like,
sits in his chair where he is somewhere
He's
else
her
entirely.
hologram.
Well, yeah, he's in a hologram.
He's in a hologram
So,
anyway.
Honestly,
She's
this is a
hologram.
bit. It's way less dumb than when it happens on Discovery because it's completely out of time.
Like
Right,
she's
yeah.
in a hologram. She's a hologram. He's in a hologram. Sweet.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
But she's not sitting in a hologram. She's sitting on Earth.
She's sitting in a different chair.
in a different chair,
Yeah.
but she's sitting comfortably in his
Yeah.
hologram chair, which is
Yeah.
not the same as.
She's a hologram
Her chair.
anyway.
Maybe
Who
there's
cares?
a hologram standard chair.
She's not there. She's a hologram. So what is
I
it?
know, but she still has the same proportions.
Like she's not a little bit farther than the armrests
that's what I mean.
are.
That's the point I'm making. It's like if
I like that it's.
I'm sitting
like
in that chair
seamless.
over
Yeah.
there, and Picard's chair is this. Would I be?
I mean, I feel like I've been nitpicking a bit, and I feel like this is.
That's a huge nitpick,
Well,
yeah. Strong work and the
Like-
nitpick. That is high-end nitpicking game.
Nitpick.
Well, guys, I'm excited for next week. It will be the penultimate episode. We've only got 2 hours of this left. So hopefully there's lots of Romulan and Borg action with some crazy alien robots. I'm hoping that it does not turn into shows I've already seen before. So here's hoping also that the phage does not get anybody between now and next week. And we'll be back on this couch to have a fascinating conversation
Wash
2
your
more
hands.
times.
Wash your
Yes,
hands.
everybody, wash your hands.
Keep your hands out of your face.
Yeah, and keep your hands out of your face. And this is hello and goodbye for a little while. See you then.